Hey, want a cookie? Oh, I know you just ate, so you're craving something a little sweet. Besides, one cookie isn't gonna kill you. How about half? Just a bite? Bite it. Bite it. Bite it.
Food noise isn't fair, but Mochi Health is. Your affordable GLP-1 source that puts you on a path to successful weight loss by quieting food noise.
Bite it.
Shh. Learn more at joinmochi.com. Mochi members have access to licensed physicians and nutritionists. Results may vary.
This episode of Voices for Justice is sponsored by Shopify. Starting a business is filled with a lot of what-ifs. What if I fail? What if nobody listens to the podcast? What if nobody cares? It can definitely be hard to get over that doubt and uncertainty, but making that leap was one of the best things I've ever done, and it's great to know that I'm not alone with a business partner like Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world, and 10% of all e-commerce in the US, from household names like Heinz and Mattel to brands just getting started. And I'm telling you, their tools really do feel like you have a business partner. They have hundreds of ready-to-use templates to help build a beautiful online store that matches your brand. You can also get the word out like you have an entire marketing team behind you. Easily create email and social media campaigns wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling. And if you get stuck, Shopify is always there to help with their award-winning 24/7 customer service. It's time to turn those what-ifs into with Shopify today. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/justice. Go to shopify.com/justice. That's shopify.com/justice. Voices for Justice is a podcast that uses adult language and discusses sensitive and potentially triggering topics, including violence, abuse, and murder. This podcast may not be appropriate for younger audiences. All parties are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Some names have been changed or omitted per their request or for safety purposes. Listener discretion is advised. My name is Sarah Turney, and this is Voices for Justice. Today I'm covering the disappearance of Marjorie Gayle McCaffrey from Charleston, South Carolina. If you listen to my episodes about Lisa McBride, you know that Gayle's name recently entered the public conversation again because of her husband, Robert McCaffrey's arrest in Lisa's case. But like I told you last week, Gayle McCaffrey is not a side note in someone else's story. She's not just the wife of the man now accused in another woman's case. Gayle has her own story, her own family, her own life, and her own unanswered questions. Gayle was a mother, a sister, a co-worker, a woman who, according to the public record, appeared to be trying to hold her family together right before she vanished. And then, in March of 2012, she was gone. For more than 14 years, Gayle's family has been forced to live in that space between what they know, what they suspect, and what still has not been proven in a courtroom. This is the case of Marjorie Gayle McCaffrey. It's St. Patrick's Day, Saturday, March 17th, 2012, in Charleston, South Carolina. 40-year-old Robert McCaffrey says that he and his wife, 36-year-old Gayle, went out for a very early dinner at 2:30 p.m., leaving their 10-year-old daughter and 4-year-old son at home. Robert would later tell deputies that after they returned home, he and Gayle argued. But at least in the public reporting that I found, that argument is never clearly explained. Not what started it, not what was said, and not whether anyone else could verify it. But Robert says that after their 2 children went to bed, he left their home at about 10 p.m. and drove northwest towards upstate South Carolina, specifically toward Easley. And this is where you really need to pay attention to the timeline. According to reporting by ABC News 4, at about 2:15 a.m. on now March 18th, Robert was stopped and ticketed for speeding in Travelers Rest, South Carolina. This is about 4 hours away from Charleston. So, at least according to the public timeline, Robert said he left home around 10 p.m. after an argument with Gayle. Hours later at 2:15 a.m., he was pulled over in Travelers Rest. And then he later said he returned home to Charleston at about 6:30 a.m. If Robert's telling the truth, that would mean he went home immediately, or soon after the traffic stop. When he got home, according to his account, Gayle was gone. The children were there, though, as was Gayle's vehicle. And sitting on the counter were Gayle's checkbook, her wedding ring, and a typed letter. This letter's been described as a farewell letter. It outlined Gayle's plans to leave for Costa Rica with another man. Nearly 12 hours later, Robert calls 911 at 5:16 p.m. to report Gayle missing. Deputies from the Charleston County Sheriff's Office were dispatched just 3 minutes later at 5:19 p.m. When they get to the home, Robert explains that he and Gayle went for an early dinner, got into a verbal argument, and then he left for an overnight trip and returned at 6:30 a.m., and that's when he discovered that Gayle was missing. He shows them her wedding ring, checkbook, and the typed letter. They also do an unofficial search of the McCaffrey home that day, and their children are taken into protective custody. On March 19th, the day after Robert called 911, the Charleston County Sheriff's Office issued a missing persons report and held a press conference. According to local reporting from ABC News 4, Sheriff Al Cannon said that at the time, the details of the typed letter were part of the investigation, and it seems that authorities were concerned enough to remove the children from the home, but also there's no apparent urgent search for Gayle. So it's a little confusing at this point. The first search for Gayle doesn't actually happen until March 21st. That's when concerned citizens call in reports of buzzards near Furman Drive, about half a mile from the McCaffrey home. Multiple agencies joined the search, but it was called off after a deceased dog was found. On March 22nd, the McCaffrey children were placed with Gayle's sister Debbie and her husband James. And just minutes after that placement, the Charleston County Sheriff's Office announced that it had identified a person of interest and returned attention to the McCaffrey home to search. On March 23rd, deputies searched the McCaffrey home again. They used dogs and they removed bags of potential evidence. Then things go quiet for about a month, until May 2nd, 2012, when the investigation changes in a major way. The Charleston County Sheriff's Office says that they are no longer working Gayle's case as a missing persons case, but instead a homicide investigation, and they publicly named Robert McCaffrey as a suspect. They also tell the public that a cooperating love interest of Robert's was assisting the investigation. This episode of Voices for Justice is brought to you by Quince. I've been trying to be more intentional about what I wear each day. I'm leaning into pieces that feel effortless, comfortable, and still put together, and Quince has been my go-to. The fabrics feel elevated, the fits are flattering, and everything just works without overthinking it. They use premium materials like 100% European linen, organic cotton, and ultra-soft denim. And the best part? Everything is priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. They work directly with ethical factories and cut out the middlemen, so you're paying for quality and craftsmanship, not brand markup. I recently just ordered their tiered linen dress, of course in black. I wanted to pair it with one of my favorite pairs of brown wedges. The problem was, I didn't have a brown purse. So I got that from Quince too. It's one of my favorite outfits. It's easy, effortless, and feels amazing, especially as we're getting a little bit warmer here in Phoenix. Refresh your everyday with luxury you'll actually use. Head to quince.com/justice for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. That's QUINCE.com/justice for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/justice. This episode of Voices for Justice is sponsored by Chewy. If you have pets, you probably know about Chewy, and you also know that when they say that they have everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy, they're not messing around. To keep them happy, Chewy has over 100,000 products from all the brands my pets love at prices I love. To keep them healthy, Chewy offers pet prescriptions, pet insurance, telehealth vet visits, and they're even rolling out vet clinics across the country. I've been shopping with them for a very long time. And in addition to the auto-ship feature that gets the dog's food to them every single month, I also love to experiment with different treats. But I'm a bit picky. For me, it has to be high quality with simple ingredients. I recently picked up treats from Shepherd Boy Farms that are 100% just chicken breast. Popcorn and Heber are already obsessed. Chewy has everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy. And right now, you can save $20 on your first order and get free shipping by going to chewpanions.chewy.com/SarahETurney. That's chewpanions.chewy.com/SarahETurney to save $20 on your first order with free shipping. chewpanions.chewy.com/SarahEterney. Minimum purchase required. New customers only. Terms and conditions apply. See site for complete details. Now, before we jump back into the case, let's take a minute to talk about Gayle, Robert, and their marriage. Gayle McCaffrey was Gayle Broom before she married Robert. Her life mostly focused on her education, career, family, and church. She graduated from Southern Wesleyan University while working her way up the corporate ladder at the Citadel College. It's a military college in Charleston. She started as a temp, but before she went missing, she had her master's degree and was the director of finance for facilities. She'd seen incredible upward movement in her career. Her personal life was rich as well. She attended the First Baptist Church in downtown Charleston, where she sang in the choir, played the handbells, and helped lead the Sunday school program. She's been described as reserved, gentle, timid, and kind. She especially displayed empathy for animals, and one of her sisters said that the craziest thing Gayle has ever done in her life was to bring animals she'd rescued into an apartment that had a no pets policy. Gayle married Robert in December 1997. We know less about his upbringing, but we do know that he spent a good amount of his childhood in New Jersey and joined the U.S. Navy in July 1989. However, within just a few weeks, he underwent a psychological evaluation where he was deemed unfit to serve due to, quote, impulse control issues, end quote. He had a follow-up evaluation the following month in August 1989, where he was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. He was honorably discharged in September 1989, having served less than 3 months. Robert's work history is also much spottier than Gayle's. We know he was a skilled carpenter who would pick up odd jobs, mostly remodeling homes. He was also a government contractor for some time. Then in 1996, he moved from New Jersey to South Carolina with his family. And as we know, by the end of 1997, he and Gayle were married. By March 2012, they'd been married for 14 years, but things weren't going so well. Just weeks before Gayle went missing, she found text messages on Robert's phone indicating he was cheating on her with a woman named Brandy Lee. At this point, she has a major choice to make: try to make it work or leave. Gayle confided in her friends and family about this affair and said she was desperate to keep her marriage intact for their 2 children. It seems she was basically begging Robert to stay at this point. Just over a week before she went missing, she created a pros and cons list for him, listing, quote, wife that loves you, end quote, as the main positive for staying in the marriage. 2 days before she went missing, Gayle booked them a romantic getaway for the following week. They were going to stay in a cabin in Hendersonville, North Carolina. The night she was last seen, St. Patrick's Day, Gayle asked her coworkers for traditional Irish recipes she could make for Robert. And the very last text message she sent to her husband shortly before she was last seen reads, quote, next to losing you, everything else is unimportant, end quote. This was clearly a woman who was desperately trying to keep her marriage together, but instead she's reported missing, having reportedly left behind a note saying she was leaving Robert and her children to live with another man in Costa Rica. It clearly wasn't adding up, and 2 months into the investigation, detectives with the Charleston County Sheriff's Office named her husband as the primary suspect in her case, and announced that his love interest is assisting them. They're doing everything but outright telling the public that Robert killed Gayle. The day after Robert was publicly named a suspect, there was a major search that spanned from May 3rd to May 4th. Over 100 people, including Citadel employees, search teams, and aerial support, searched a property off Highway 61, but it doesn't seem that anything was found. It was clear to pretty much everyone that they were trying to build a case against Robert. But really, Gayle's case just sat. In November, there was a search in upstate South Carolina that included canine units, horses, and large volunteer teams. But again, nothing was found. The holidays came and went without any answers about Gayle, as does the first anniversary of her disappearance in March 2013. Investigators basically just say that same line that we're used to hearing. the case is still active and open. Then another year goes by, and the second anniversary passes without any news either. But a few months later in June 2014, the case begins to see a lot more movement. On June 13th, investigators search areas off Bees Ferry Road, about 3 miles from the McCaffrey home. But again, they say nothing was found. But we do know that something appears to have happened around this time, because about a week later, on June 21st, 2014, Robert McCaffrey is arrested for obstruction of justice, not murder. When investigators announced that Robert had been arrested, they say it was due to inconsistent statements regarding Gayle's disappearance. They say he knowingly impeded the investigation by providing this inconsistent and, quote, not truthful, end quote, information. That's basically what we know at this point in the case. The following day, June 22nd, a judge sets Robert's bond at $100,000, and he's ordered to surrender his passport. However, about a month later, that bond was reduced to $50,000, and Robert was able to get himself out of jail pending trial. And we know how these things go. The obstruction case did not go to trial right away. Years passed as everything is being prepared and argued. In that time, Robert moved to North Carolina and somehow pursued a new romantic interest. And then, in early March of 2018, a South Carolina probate judge officially declared Gayle legally deceased and named Robert as the person responsible for her death. Now, this all happens before the obstruction trial even begins, and just a few weeks later, there was another major development in Gayle's case. The Charleston County Sheriff's Office announced that they arrested Robert McCaffrey for Gayle's murder.
At DSW, we ask the important questions, like, what shoes are you going to wear? Whether you're prepping for wedding season, festival season, or just planning the ultimate vacay, the right shoes can make or break an RSVP. So own the moment. You've got big plans, and we've got just the shoes, at the perfect price, of course. Get ready to get ready with Designer Shoe Warehouse. Head to your DSW store or dsw.com today and let us surprise you.
Insurance isn't one size fits all. That's why customers have enjoyed Progressive's Name Your Price tool for years now. With the Name Your Price tool, you tell them what you want to pay, and they'll show you options that fit your budget. So whether you're picking out your first policy or just looking for something that works better for you and your family, they make it easy to see your options. Visit Progressive.com. Find a rate that works for you with the Name Your Price tool. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
6 years, almost to the day after the disappearance of Gayle McCaffrey, her husband and the primary suspect in her case pretty much from the beginning, Robert McCaffrey, is finally arrested for her murder. But that murder charge did not move forward. ABC News 4 and other Charleston outlets later reported that a Charleston County grand jury no-billed the charge on April 10, 2018, citing a lack of evidence presented by authorities. A no-bill basically means that the grand jury didn't return an indictment. It doesn't mean somebody's innocent, and it doesn't mean that nothing happened. It means the state didn't get the murder charge through that stage of the process. And this was obviously a huge blow to Gayle's family. According to reporting by Andrew Knapp for the Post and Courier, Gayle's sister Helen said, quote, "Everyone said to trust the system, and that didn't work," end quote. While Gayle's sister Debbie focused on raising Gayle's 2 children, Helen was really the family spokesperson. She spoke to the media. She also spent years with a handmade sign posted on the inside of her dashboard to raise awareness for her sister. And she kept a light on in a window in her home for years, vowing not to turn it off until Gayle came home. She was at all the searches, led the charge on social media, and she really trusted the system to get Gayle justice, as I think most families impacted by this type of crime at least try to do. So why didn't it work? Why didn't the charge stick? Well, here's what we know. Captain Roger Antonio said that it's extremely difficult to present an entire circumstantial case in the allotted time of just 45 minutes. Former Attorney General Charlie Condon has said that the outcome may have been impacted by low attendance, stating, quote, "We don't know who attended the grand jury. 18 members of the grand jury. You have to have 12 to indict. But if only 13 show up today, that way only 2 could vote against it, and that would result in a no bill," end quote. However, as we see so often, most of the discussion around the no bill from the grand jury was about how the investigators hadn't found Gayle's body. Once again, it felt like a perpetrator was being rewarded for hiding a body well. But investigators said they weren't giving up on the murder charges. It was just clear that they weren't moving forward at this time. Robert wasn't completely off the hook, though, because what did proceed was the obstruction case. And here we learn a lot. Robert McCaffrey's obstruction trial began in Charleston about a year later on March 4th, 2019, and none other than his mistress, Brandy Lee, takes the stand. She says she and Robert met in a bar in Travelers Rest where they exchanged phone numbers. Robert told Brandy that he and Gayle were separated, and from there, the pair began meeting in hotel rooms to have sex. One day, Brandy said that she was down in Charleston, and just so happened to walk into the same restaurant where Robert and Gayle were having a meal. And that's how she found out that Robert was lying to both of them. Not long after, Brandy said that she started getting text messages from Gayle telling her to stay away from Robert. Brandy obliged and told the court that she ended her affair with Robert, but that he also tried to win her back. Then Brandy discovered she was pregnant with Robert's child and sent a photo of the pregnancy test. Robert drove up to see her, and then he called her at 6:30 a.m. on March 18th, 2012 to say that when he got home, Gayle was gone. This is a huge bombshell. I mean, obviously, this is a brand new motive that the public is hearing for the first time. And I will say that even though Brandy texted Robert about her pregnancy, it doesn't seem like she was interested in continuing that relationship. Now, I say that because a friend of Brandy's testified that Brandy was deeply uncomfortable when Robert drove up to see her in Travelers Rest after they'd already broken up. The jury also got to see the video of Robert's traffic stop on March 18th. He told the officer that he and his wife were having problems, and that he'd gone to Travelers Rest to see a girl he'd been dating, but was rejected by her. So it seems that Brandy's story lined up a lot better than Robert McCaffrey's did. The jury also heard about evidence found in searches of the McCaffrey home and Robert's vehicle. 2 gun magazines were found inside a lunchbox in Robert's vehicle, as well as a 4-page document that had details about a getaway property in the mountains. They also found several briefcases and lockboxes with guns and ammo inside the home. It seems investigators also removed sets of bedding from the McCaffrey home. These were sheets found in the dryer as well as on the bed that had blood stains on them. These were sent off for testing and confirmed to be human blood, but that's really all we know. Experts also describe finding text messages from Gayle to Robert stating her wishes to work on their marriage despite the affair. It seems Gayle had also emailed with her pastor about their marital issues and sought advice on how to repair their relationship. But it seemed that the crux of this obstruction charge revolved around disproving Gayle's farewell letter, which prosecutors presented as fabricated by Robert McCaffrey. In the letter, Gayle says that she's leaving Robert and their 2 children for a man named Nicky in Costa Rica. It seems that in his interviews with investigators, Robert showed them a photo of Gayle and her sisters on vacation in Costa Rica as some type of proof of her departure. But her sisters staunchly denied his statements that Gayle met a man or had any type of extramarital affair on that trip. It seems he found a random photo of her on vacation with her sisters and tried to use that as evidence. The letter also stated that Gayle stole a large safe from their attic that weighed about 300 pounds. Not just the contents, but the entire safe. Apparently inside that safe, Robert says, was $110,000 and a gun. However, investigators testified that after reviewing digital evidence and interviewing witnesses, they believe that safe likely never even existed. Gayle's family also testified that the verbiage in that letter was not consistent with how Gayle spoke, wrote, or text. Specifically, they say that the letter contained several curse words and language that she never used. There was also expert testimony stating that Gayle very likely did not write that letter. It was also revealed that on the day Gayle was reported missing, Robert had also called his father, a retired detective, who immediately advised him to get a lawyer before speaking with police. I mean, while this is just an obstruction charge, it feels a lot like they presented the case for Robert to be charged with murder. He'd clearly been having an affair. Brandy had ended it but discovered she was pregnant. Gayle and Robert got into a fight. Her children last saw her at 10 p.m. Robert goes to Brandy but is rejected. And then Gayle is just gone. You guys hear me say all the time that I feel like anything is possible in these true crime cases that I cover. But sometimes it feels like what happened is as clear as day. On March 8, 2019, a jury convicted Robert McCaffrey of obstruction of justice. It took them about 20 minutes to deliberate. Then a judge sentenced him to the maximum sentence of 10 years in prison. And that is significant. Because again, this was not a murder conviction. But a jury did find that Robert obstructed the investigation into his wife's disappearance. That conviction was later affirmed by the South Carolina Court of Appeals in 2021, which is one of the most important court records in this case, because it confirms that the conviction and sentence survived appeal. According to the appellate record and reporting, the obstruction conviction involved allegations that he lied about his whereabouts, encouraged a woman he was involved with to lie, and created or authored the supposed farewell letter from Gayle. Of course, after Robert McCaffrey's conviction, the legal process continued. In January of 2023, he waived parole consideration. And on May 1st, 2023, he was released from prison into South Carolina's Supervised Reentry Program. Robert was a free man, at least for the time being. And that release was difficult for Gayle's family, because from their perspective, the person they believed responsible for Gayle's disappearance had served time for obstruction, but Gayle was still missing. There was still no body. There was still no murder conviction. And there was still no final answer. And then, in 2024 and again in 2025, the Charleston County Sheriff's Office renewed its public appeals for information in Gayle's case. And that is important, because it shows that the agency was still publicly treating this as an active homicide investigation. So the case wasn't closed. It wasn't forgotten by the people who loved Gayle. And it wasn't forgotten by law enforcement. But publicly, it was stuck in that awful place that so many families know too well. Everyone suspects something terrible happened, but there's not enough public evidence, or at least not enough chargeable evidence, to get a murder case across that line. Then came 2026, when Robert McCaffrey was arrested for the murder of a woman named Lisa McBride.
What they did to your family, you're lucky to make it out alive.
Streaming on Peacock.
These men are going to come after me. Taking them out is my only chance.
Put a bullet in her head.
From the co-creator of Ozark.
Looks like a family was running drugs.
Execution-style killing, it's rare for the keys. Any leads on who they might have been running for?
The cartel killed my family. I'm gonna kill them. All of them.
MIA. Streaming now. Only on Peacock.
Lisa McBride disappeared from Vernon, New Jersey in June of 1990, 7 years before Robert McCaffrey married Gayle. Of course, I have 2 episodes about Lisa's case, and I highly encourage you to listen to them so you can see how these cases intersect in more detail. But as a very brief refresher, Lisa was 27 years old. She'd gone to a concert in New York City with friends, stopped afterward at Big John's Pub in West Milford, and returned home alone in the early morning hours. A few hours later, when she didn't show up for work, her coworkers immediately knew something was wrong. Her brother went to her house and her car was there. Her bed was stripped of sheets and blankets. Her phone line had been cut. A window screen had been cut. Her purse and keys were missing. Months later, on October 20th, 1990, Lisa's remains were found in a wooded area in Sandyston Township, in or near the Delaware Water Gap National Recreation Area. Her case remained unsolved for more than 35 years. Then, in 2026, according to the Sussex County Prosecutor's Office, authorities charged Robert W. McCaffrey Jr. with first-degree murder, first-degree kidnapping, and second-degree burglary in connection with Lisa's death. He has pleaded not guilty. Like I mentioned last week, it seems that the two main things that moved her case forward was a witness coming forward to say that Robert had confessed to them and a washcloth found on Lisa's headboard. But again, go listen to my episode from last week to hear all about that. I just want to emphasize that Lisa's case matters to Gayle's case because of how Robert was identified. The public record indicates that the Charleston investigation into Gayle eventually produced the DNA profile that became operative in CODIS. There is some discrepancy in public reporting about exactly which South Carolina arrest or event led to the CODIS entry. Some records point to the 2018 murder arrest. Other reporting says that the profile was entered because of the 2014 arrest. That discrepancy does matter, and I think it should be tracked carefully as the case moves forward. But what appears clear from the public record is this. Gayle's disappearance and the investigation into Robert in South Carolina helped create the conditions that allowed New Jersey investigators to eventually connect Robert McCaffrey to the DNA evidence in Lisa McBride's case. That's a significant development, because for more than 3 decades, Lisa's case had no arrest, and for more than a decade, Gayle's case had no murder conviction. Then, one investigation seems to have helped the other move forward, almost like these two women were helping each other. And that's why people are looking at Gayle's case again. Not because Lisa's case automatically solves Gayle's, not because charges in New Jersey equal proof in South Carolina, but because the public record now shows a man convicted of obstructing his wife's homicide investigation is also charged in a separate, decades-old homicide where prosecutors say DNA and an alleged confession point to him. That's not something you can responsibly ignore. And it became legally relevant almost immediately. At Robert McCaffrey's April 2026 detention hearing in New Jersey, according to court coverage from NJ.com, prosecutors brought up his South Carolina obstruction conviction. Judge Janine Allen cited that conviction when ordering him detained pending trial. The judge wasn't concerned just about whether or not Robert would show up for trial, but whether he might obstruct the criminal justice process. That's where Gayle's case becomes more than just background. It becomes a part of the legal reasoning for why a judge decided Robert should remain in custody while the Lisa McBride case moves forward. Again, it just feels like they're somehow helping each other. And I cannot say this enough. Gayle is not just a legal footnote. Gayle's disappearance matters on its own, which is why I made this episode. Her children deserve answers about their mother. Her sisters deserve answers about what happened to her. So let's talk about what's still unanswered in Gayle's case. I think the biggest unanswered question is obvious. Where is Gayle? As we know, her body has never been recovered. They don't have a full forensic picture of what happened to her body. They don't have a cause of death. They don't know the timing, location, injury, disposal, or whether evidence was moved. All the things a judge and jury want to hear to confirm what most people already believe happened. The second unanswered question is what exactly happened between Gayle and Robert after they came home from dinner on March 17, 2012. Robert said they argued. Then he left around 10 p.m. and drove upstate. He said he returned home around 6:30 a.m. and found that Gayle was gone. But if Gayle was gone by 6:30 a.m., why wasn't 911 called until 5:16 p.m.? What happened during those almost 11 hours? What exactly was done before law enforcement was contacted? Who did Robert speak to? What was cleaned, moved, washed, thrown away, or altered? The third unanswered question is how did this letter come to be? Who typed it? When was it created? What device was used? Was it printed in their home? Did forensic analysis connect it to a specific computer, printer, or drafting process? We know the letter was central to the obstruction charge, but we still don't have a lot of detail about it. The fourth unanswered question is what the blood evidence means. We know that human blood was found on sheets recovered from the home, but we don't have the full lab packet, a full interpretation, or a homicide case built successfully around that evidence. So, was it Gayle's? How much was there? Could it be explained away by the defense? Was it degraded, mixed, limited, or otherwise difficult to use? I think these questions matter because they may help explain why prosecutors could win an obstruction conviction but not secure the murder indictment. The fifth unanswered question is whether anyone else has information but just hasn't come forward. In cases like this, people sometimes convince themselves that what they know is too small, too old, too secondhand, or too embarrassing to matter. Maybe somebody heard a comment years ago. Maybe somebody saw a vehicle. Maybe they were told a story that didn't sit right. Maybe somebody knew about a storage unit, a hunting spot, a dump site, a property, a body of water, a rural road, a marsh, a construction site, or any place that Robert frequented. Maybe somebody else knew about the marriage, the affair, the timeline, or what was said in the days after Gayle vanished. And the final unanswered question is whether the new attention from Lisa McBride's case will help move Gayle's case forward. Gayle's sister Helen said that the family was shocked to learn that Robert may have killed somebody else before, and she said that they were glad that Lisa's family may get justice. Her sister Debbie has also spoken publicly, saying she had no doubt that Robert killed Gayle. Those are family members speaking from the pain of more than a decade without answers, and I think it's completely understandable that this new arrest would be both horrifying and hopeful. Horrifying because if it is true, it raises the possibility that there was a longer pattern of violence. Hopeful because sometimes one case cracking open can bring new eyes, new attention, and maybe new information. But Gayle's family shouldn't have to depend on another woman's case for their loved one to be remembered or to get justice for her. Marjorie Gayle McCaffrey was a mother of two, a woman who worked at the Citadel, a sister whose family kept pushing, a woman whose case is still being investigated as a homicide, a woman who has never been found, and a woman whose story has been overshadowed at times by the legal history of the man she was married to. So I want to bring it back to Gayle. On March 17th, 2012, Gayle's children went to bed. According to her family, that was the last time they saw their mother. By the next evening, Robert McCaffrey was calling 911 to report her missing. A jury later convicted him of obstruction of justice. A judge sentenced him to 10 years. But Gayle still has not been brought home. And that is the injustice at the heart of this case. Not just that someone may have taken Gayle's life, but that someone may have also tried to take the truth from her children, her sisters, her coworkers, her friends, and everyone who loved her. That's what obstruction does. It doesn't just slow down paperwork. It steals time. It steals clarity. It steals the ability for a family to search in the right direction. It creates false trails, false narratives, and false hope. And in a missing persons case, time is everything. Which brings me right to our call to action. Please share Gayle's case. I wish our justice system operated differently, but it truly feels with Robert's arrest for the murder of Lisa McBride, this is likely their best shot they may have at bringing a murder charge for Gayle too, or at least getting more answers for her family. Sharing Gayle's case helps because it puts her name back in front of people who may have known Robert McCaffrey, who may have lived near Limestone Boulevard, Bees Ferry Road, Highway 61, or just the West Ashley area in March of 2012. It helps because someone may remember a conversation from years ago differently now. Someone may have dismissed something as gossip, or thought the police already knew, or felt afraid to come forward. But even one small detail could help investigators understand where Gayle is, what happened to her, or who else may have information. So please share Gayle's story. Share her name. Share her face. Please share. As a reminder, Marjorie Gayle McCaffrey was 36 years old when she disappeared from Charleston County, South Carolina. She was last seen at her home on Limestone Boulevard in the West Ashley area on March 17, 2012. Gayle was white with brown hair and blue eyes. She stood about 5 feet 2 inches tall and weighed around 155 pounds. Anyone with information is asked to contact the Charleston County Sheriff's Office at 843-554-2241. But as always, thank you, I love you, and I'll talk to you next time. Voices for Justice is hosted and produced by me, Sarah Turney, and is a Voices for Justice media original. If you love what we do here, please don't forget to follow, rate, and review the show in your podcast player. It's an easy and free way to help us and help more people find these cases in need of justice. Welcome to the Secret After Show. The studio door is open, and our emotional support puppies, Popcorn and Heber, are in the room. Let's go right into the case. Obviously, I wanted to cover this because I think that Gayle deserves her own episode. And that's not to discount Lisa McBride at all, right? It's neither of these women's fault that this happened to them, whatever that may be, very likely connected to one man, Robert McCaffrey. I'm not going to lie, this was a hard one to record and research and do all this so close to the anniversary of my sister going missing. It feels like it's not that hard to make somebody go missing. And if you can hide a body, sometimes you can escape charges. And I keep racking my brain for a better solution to bridge this gap in the justice system between what common sense tells us very likely happened and what we can prove in court. And I don't know what that, like I always say, I don't know what that perfect solution is. It just feels like there's some type of gap there. And I understand, I never want an innocent person to go to prison. I just feel like so many people are getting away with outright murder. I don't know. You guys tell me. Is there a solution out there that you don't see? Or do we sometimes just have to think we know what happened with no resolve through the justice system? I do think it's interesting, though, that the typed letter that investigators clearly don't believe, Gayle's family clearly doesn't believe, this evidence that, Robert possibly likely left behind is what really got him on that obstruction charge. It wasn't even the mistress who was pregnant. It was the letter. And I think that that's really interesting, that he really shot himself in the foot with that one. Now, the next thing I have on my list is the 300-pound safe being removed from the attic. I put, WTF are we doing here, Robert? What are we doing? Saying that Gayle got, I don't know how their attic is set up, right? Maybe there's an elevator. I don't know about. How are we getting a 300-pound safe in and out of an attic? Can somebody answer that question for me? Because without some type of lift or elevator, like, I'm thinking your like traditional attic, right? Maybe they had stairs. I'll give that to Robert. Let's say that they had stairs. How, Robert, is one person, and maybe Nikki from Costa Rica or whatever, let's say that they're two. How are they moving this safe up and down stairs to the attic? I don't buy it. Investigators didn't buy it. And that detail really stuck with me. Like, I want to read this letter so badly because I think it would prove even more so that Robert is just a terrible liar. Last thing I had on my list here, was Helen's quote. Everyone said to trust the system, and that didn't work. Straight to my heart. Because it's so true. It's so true. When you go through these court processes, whatever, at least that's what I was told. And I know a lot of families that are told the same thing by their victim's rights attorney, the prosecutors, whatever it might be. Like, all you can do now is sit back and trust the process. So hearing that quote was like a dagger through my heart because it's so hard. It's so hard, especially when you're Helen, right? Helen, who has led the charge in the media. She is the family spokesperson. She is like, going to the searches, doing all the things. She's doing everything she possibly can for her sister. And it's like movement. And then it's like, bam, there's a trial. Sit and wait. And it drives you insane. And then when things don't work out the way that you hoped that they would, the justice system doesn't, provide justice. All you can sit back and do sometimes is think, what did I do wrong? And what else could I have done? It just breaks my heart. As far as media discrepancies, again, not a lot. I just had to dig. A lot of the reporting, especially about Gayle, was really shallow. And especially now, when you try to look up things about Gayle's case, you get a lot about Lisa, which is, it's great. I want both women to get attention, obviously, but not a lot of media discrepancies, thank goodness. On to our heroes of the episode, Gayle's sisters, for leading the charge, even after all these years. I mean, picking up the pieces in every way, literally. And I know a lot more about Gayle's children that I wasn't going to say in this episode. Obviously, one was 4 and the other was 10, and I don't know if they've chosen this life for themselves, so I'm not going to choose it for them. It's just devastating, and obviously the reasons why Gayle's sisters make the hero of this episode is because, I feel like they divided and conquered very well. Of course, I know nothing about, the back end of these dynamics, right? But, you have Debbie taking care of the children and trying to, I imagine, give them love and some type of normalcy for life, right? And then you have Helen, who's the public spokesperson. And that is hard to do. Both are extremely difficult to do. So just shout out to them. They make the heroes of this episode for just taking care of everything and really navigating through the unjust parts of our justice system. And wherever you guys are, I am sending you so, so much love. Now on to our segment of hope. I need a segment of hope, y'all. I need a segment of hope right now. And this is from KTLA5, LA out of California, obviously, Ventura County. This is written by Jocelyn Fisette, F-I-S-E-T, I'm sorry. And the title reads, Remains of Teen Found at Ventura County Dump Site in 1993, Cold Case Identified. The article reads, the Ventura County Sheriff's Office announced that the remains, long referred to as Camarillo Teen 1993, belong to Joseph Patrick Reardon, also known as Joe Gilbreth, who was born June 17, 1970. It looks like his partial remains were discovered on August 30th, 1993 during a cleanup of a dump site off Beardsley Road, just north of Wright Road, in this unincorporated area of Ventura County. At the time, they just believed that it belonged to, the remains belonged to a male between the ages of 13 and 18. The information was entered into NamUs, but it apparently just sat. And then, in March 2025, the Ventura County Medical Examiner submitted forensic evidence to Othram Labs. They were able to extract DNA from the remains and develop a DNA profile, which was provided to the Ventura County Sheriff's Office Cold Case Unit. Detectives conducted numerous interviews and phone calls and identified possible relatives. Reference DNA samples were collected and compared to the DNA profile. Investigators ultimately made a breakthrough, positively identifying the remains as Reardon. And this is brand new, so basically they just discovered who he was, and now they're asking the public for help. They say any detail, no matter how small, could be the key to bringing answers and closure to this case. But obviously, I thought that this would make a great segment of hope because it just shows that even after decades, sometimes the answers were there all along. I think it's very possible that Gayle may have already been found and not yet identified, waiting for funding or some additional media coverage or just Othram Labs to help. But, as always, thank you, I love you, and I'll talk to you next time.